I pushed aside the leaves of some tropical bushes. Hugh and his father were walking along the path in front of me. Suddenly, a guy ran up to them. He was talking quickly. I couldn't quite make out what he was saying, but Hugh's dad abruptly cut him off. "Get rid of it. It's no use to us now." My heart sank into my stomach. Hugh was the son of an actual Mafia boss. I slowly began to crawl backward, but then Hugh turned his head. "I heard something." He stepped directly towards the bushes where I was hiding. "Hi, I'm Mila. Up until recently, my life was as ordinary as it gets. I lived with my parents, went to school, and dated Colin, the heartthrob every girl at school was secretly pining for. I thought things between us were really serious, until one day, Colin said we needed to talk. We need to break up. I'm in love with someone else." I was sure I had misheard him, but no, he spoke like he had already made up his mind. I just ran home and cried into my pillow. I went to school the next day anyway, but it was a mistake, because the first thing I saw was Colin standing in the hallway and hugging Elena, my classmate who was always batting her eyelashes at him. They looked as if they'd been dating forever. I turned around and ran out of school. At home, I locked myself in my room and wouldn't open the door for anyone, not even my parents. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling and feeling empty. After a couple of days, my dad couldn't take it anymore and cautiously suggested, "How about we go to the Caribbean? Get some rest, clear our heads." I refused at first, but then I thought it might be a good idea to get away for a while, so I agreed. We arrived in the Caribbean. Everything around me was so beautiful that a normal person would have shrieked with delight, but I didn't care. I was too busy wallowing in my misery. We were walking towards the hotel when Dad suddenly went pale, grabbed me and Mom, and yanked us in the other direction. "What's wrong?" But he didn't really explain anything. Later, I saw him quietly arguing with Mom, but I was too tired to care. I went for a walk on the beach. That's where I saw Hugh for the first time. "Hey, wanna go for a swim?" But I was in such a rotten mood, I snapped at him and headed to the pier. I stood there staring at the sky and was so lost in thought that I slipped and tumbled into the water. I was a terrible swimmer. I started gulping water, panicking, and there was no one around. But then, someone yanked me up and dragged me onto the beach. I was coughing and shaking, and only then did it hit me. It was Hugh who saved me. Thanks. Once I could stand again, I headed back to the hotel. On the way there, I saw Dad standing behind a bush and watching someone. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Nothing. Let's go have dinner." We met up with Mom and went to a fancy restaurant, but Dad kept looking around like he was expecting someone to jump him. The next day, Mom and I were lying on the beach when Dad strolled up to us and lay down looking pleased. A man at the other end of the beach suddenly yelled, "It's sizzling! It's sizzling!" Dad took one look and burst out laughing, like he'd been expecting that. "You're acting like a child. You should have dealt with it already." "Not a chance. I'm not ever letting this go." They started arguing again. I walked away to the rocks. Honestly, I just couldn't take it anymore. And there I saw Hugh again. He was with his pals and they were jumping off the cliff into the water. I remembered how he saved me and decided I should thank him properly this time. "Hi, thanks again for pulling me out yesterday." "No problem. Why the sad face?" "Boy trouble. Then you need to jump off the cliff. Adrenaline flushes out all the sad hormones." "No way. If anything goes wrong, I'll save you. Just like yesterday." I found myself hesitating. Should I try it? Finally, I stood on the edge of the cliff and jumped. I screamed, scared out of my mind. But as soon as the water swallowed me, it was like something in me turned over. Hugh jumped in after me and helped me out. Once we made it to the shore, I felt this strange, long-forgotten sense of ease. I realized Colin wasn't the only thing in the world worth living for. I thanked Hugh, and he asked if I wanted to meet up later that night and hang out. I agreed. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Before you know it, something life-changing will happen to you. From then on, we went on for walks, talking and laughing together. I realized I felt good when I was with him. At some point, I noticed I wasn't even thinking about Colin anymore. I liked Hugh. The more we talked, the stronger that feeling grew. He told me he lived in the same city as me and was just there with his parents. Meanwhile, things in our room were getting crazy because Dad was acting stranger and stranger every day. He and Mom fought non-stop. What's going on? This is grown-up stuff. One day, Mom and I were having lunch, just sitting and eating pasta, when Dad showed up. He had this sly look on his face, like he'd pulled off an incredibly successful heist. A couple of minutes later, at the other end of the room, a man suddenly started gasping and asking for water. My dad chuckled to himself. It was the same man, the one I'd seen running along the beach and screaming. Dad was acting all weird. Too many coincidences. I told myself the truth was right there within reach, and I was going to uncover it. The next day, I followed Dad around the hotel grounds. He drank a coconut cocktail and then studied the island map for a long time. Nothing criminal. It was actually boring. Just when I was about to give up, Hugh showed up. "Come on, I'll show you an awesome waterfall." I decided I could always find out what was going on with Dad later. We walked through the jungle, and Hugh rambled on about one thing after another. He mentioned that his dad was accidentally served a super spicy meal the day before and yelled for water for the whole restaurant to hear. Then, he said that earlier that day, his dad had put on sunscreen that turned out to be hot sauce and sprinted down the beach screaming. So that man was Hugh's dad? My dad always seemed to be right there when those things happened too. What was going on? I didn't get a chance to ask because we reached the waterfall. It was huge and so beautiful it took my breath away. It was like we stepped into another world. And right there, surrounded by all the beauty, Hugh suddenly stopped, looked at me, and kissed me. I barely even had time to register what was happening. Everything inside me lit up at once. The roar of the waterfall, the warm air, his embrace. I just stood there thinking, how is it even possible that only a couple of days ago I was crying over Colin? We came back to the hotel as an official couple and immediately ran into my parents. Mom smiled when she saw us, but Dad turned white as snow, as if the guy standing next to me wasn't Hugh, but a zombie on holiday. I introduced Hugh to my parents. Mom greeted him with a smile, but Dad looked extremely stressed. Later, after Hugh left, Dad said seriously, "You are not to spend time with that boy." What? Why? Because he's the son of a mafia boss. Stop it, dear. You're overreacting. He'll toy with you and then dump you. You can't be together. And that's when I snapped. Back at the beach, was it you who gave hot sauce to that mafia boss instead of sunscreen? And at the restaurant too, was that your doing? Dad turned away in irritation, but didn't deny it. He had it coming. You're not going out with that boy and that spinal. I was furious. Dad was acting like a teenager, not an adult. Besides, I liked Hugh, and I wasn't going to avoid him. But things weren't that simple. The next day, I noticed Hugh kept disappearing somewhere. He was acting strange, like he was hiding something. I told myself not to take Dad's words to heart, but they kept replaying in my mind. In the end, I decided to follow Hugh. I sat in the bushes and watched him walk somewhere with his father. Then some guy ran up to them and said something. "Get rid of it. It's no use to us now." My heart sank into my stomach. Hugh was the son of an actual mafia boss. I heard something. He stepped directly towards the bushes where I was hiding. I didn't wait to find out what happened next. I bolted. A couple of days later, another nasty thing happened. I was swimming in the pool when I saw Hugh talking to some girl. She was standing way too close, smiling way too much. It was obvious they knew each other. Dad's words came crashing into my head. He'll toy with you and then dump you. That evening, I was sitting in our room feeling miserable when I got a text from Colin. He wrote that Elena had dumped him and he realized he still loved me. He apologized and begged me for a second chance. Since I was angry at Hugh, I started flirting with Colin. I told him I was in the Caribbean. A couple of days later, Hugh came to me and asked me to go out with him. I wanted to say no, but in the end I agreed. He led me to the beach where we first met. There was a beautiful small table with candles and fruit there. It all looked so romantic. I've been planning this surprise for you for a while, so that's why you were being so secretive. What about the girl by the pool? He laughed and explained that she was a hotel employee who helped him set up the surprise. At that moment, I realized I had been wrong. I told him about my dad's words, that he was supposedly a mafia boss's son. He laughed even harder. My dad is just an architect. But what did he want to get rid of? I heard his conversation with that guy. Oh, that? The hotel employee was asking what to do about the ruined carpet in our room. At that moment, I felt a wave of relief, like all my worries had simply dissolved into the warm Caribbean air. I was happy to be with Hugh again, but it turned out that my personal soap opera had one more plot in store for me, because the very next moment, Colin appeared out of nowhere. Get away from my girlfriend. I froze. Hugh froze. Even the seagulls seemed to fall silent. Colin, what are you even doing here? I came here for you. I realized I can't live without you. I made a mistake. Please forgive me. Hugh, it's not what you think. Colin is not my boyfriend, but Colin seemed intent on ruining my life. He pulled out his phone. What about our texts? He opened our chat and showed Hugh the messages where I flirted with Colin like a complete idiot. I felt so ashamed, like I'd been caught doing something really wrong, and all I wanted to do was sink through the sand. Hugh looked at the chat as if it had knocked the wind out of him. He said nothing, only turned on his heel and left. Hugh, wait! What have you done? But Colin just stood there looking baffled, like he genuinely had no idea what he'd done was a total disaster. I dashed towards my parents. I needed some kind of explanation for what was going on. Colin trailed after me like a puppy. Why did you tell me that lie about Hugh and his dad? He's not a mafia boss. Well, he used to be. Come on, dear, that was back in school. And then the truth came out. It was so ridiculous, I didn't believe it at first. It turned out that my dad and Hugh's father went to the same school. Hugh's father used to be a troublemaker, the ringleader of a school gang their classmates jokingly called the Mafia, and he was considered their boss. He bullied my dad all through school, hid his shoes, stuck gum on his chair, and jumped out from around corners to scare him. It finally made sense why Dad nearly lost it when he ran into him here. He'd been carrying a grudge that usually dies somewhere around middle school. His made it all the way to 45. I was so ashamed of him. I didn't want to hear any more explanations. I ran to Hugh's parents. What's happening? Where are we going? Why won't you talk to me? But I didn't have time for explanations. I needed to find Hugh before he decided I was the worst girlfriend in the world. I ran to Hugh's parents' room and asked them to call him, but Hugh's dad said his son had taken his surfboard and gone out for a ride. But it's nighttime already. He might smash into the cliffs. I rushed to the beach. Colin stumbled along after me. Mila, can you explain what's going on? When I reached the shore, I immediately saw Hugh. He was on his surfboard, and the waves were getting bigger. Hugh was slowly heading straight for the cliffs. I screamed and waved my arms, but the noise of the waves was so loud that he couldn't hear anything at all. A massive wave lifted Hugh higher than it should have, and the next second, he slammed into the rocks and then fell back into the water. I screamed and ran into the ocean, forgetting that I swam like a brick. You're gonna drown, you can't swim. I swam as fast as I could, gulping water, choking on it, and in the end, I made it to Hugh. He was unconscious. I somehow dragged him up onto the shore. I don't even know how. Must have been pure adrenaline. I tried to bring him around, shaking him and calling his name, but he didn't respond. Help me carry him. Together we dragged Hugh to my room because it was the closest. The second we stumbled inside, Dad launched into his usual rant. So you are going out with this boy. He's just like his father. Mom immediately started chest compressions and then mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And after a few seconds that felt like an eternity, Hugh gasped for breath. Then his parents appeared, terrified and pale, and rushed to him. Hugh, get out of here. Hugh's dad looked closely at my dad and recognized him. Charlie? Is it really you? They talked. Hugh's dad said he had been meaning to apologize for ages, admitting he was an idiot and a bully in school, and that he was ashamed of everything he had done back then. See, it's that simple. You just needed to talk. But of course, Dad wouldn't admit he'd blown the whole thing out of proportion and continued to sulk. Hugh left with his parents to rest. Finally, we're alone, Mila. Colin, get lost. I'm not going to be with you. Go back to your Elena. I've fallen in love. For real. Colin stood there looking at me like he'd been smacked in the face with a math textbook. Then he simply turned around and left. The next day, I sat on the same cliff Hugh and I had jumped from and wondered if Hugh would forgive me or if I had lost him forever. I knew I'd find you here. I turned around and saw Hugh. So first, I saved you, and then you saved me? I told him the whole story about Colin, from start to finish, and asked if he could forgive me. He didn't answer. He just leaned in and kissed me, and that was a better answer than anything he could have said. Honestly, there's no point in holding on to old grudges, ones that should have been tossed in the trash ages ago, and it's not up to your parents to choose your partner or tell you who to love. Do you agree with me on that?